You probably remember Yoon Dong-ju from your school textbooks, right? Kind of frozen in time as this icon of resistance. But today, we're going to go so much deeper. We're going to peel back those layers and get into the tormented, brilliant, and deeply human story of a young man whose only weapon was his poetry.
And it all starts with this. Just this brutally short telegram. In February of 1945, this is what arrived for his family. Yoon Dong-ju, a vibrant, brilliant 27-year-old, was suddenly gone. I mean, can you imagine? It was a shocking, totally incomprehensible message that signaled a tragic and very mysterious end.
Now, the official papers, they listed the cause of death as a cerebral hemorrhage, but, well, that was nowhere near the full truth. The real question, the one that really haunts his legacy to this day, is what actually happened to this young poet inside that cold cell in Fukuoka prison.
To really understand the man, we've got to rewind. We're going all the way back to the beginning. The year is 1917, in a village called Mandongcheon, way up in Manchuria. Now, this was not just any village. It was this vibrant Christian intellectual community. Think of it like a base camp for the Korean independence movement, a place where the Korean language and spirit were being kept alive against all odds. This is the world that made him.
Yoon Dong-ju never really walked alone. He grew up alongside his cousin, Song Mong-yu, who was like his shadow. They were born just months apart, totally inseparable, but complete and total opposites. Yoon was the quiet, introspective one, always in his head. Song, on the other hand, was a born leader, a man of action who, as a teenager, literally tried to run away and join the Independence Army. This whole dynamic, the quiet poet and the fiery activist, it would end up defining both of their lives.
So while his cousin was dreaming of armed struggle, Yoon's passion, it was ferocious in a totally different way. He was just completely devoted to literature. I mean, get this. When he couldn't afford a poetry collection by Baksek, he went to the library and copied the entire book by hand. His most passionate love affair wasn't with a person, it was with words, with the Korean language itself.
Okay, let's fast forward a bit to the late 1930s. Yoon's entering college, and Japan's assimilation policies are at their absolute most brutal. The Korean language was being systematically erased. Just speaking it, teaching it, or, writing in it was a serious act of defiance. It was something that could get you labeled a thought criminal.
And it's in this darkness that Yoon develops his core philosophy, what's known as the aesthetics of shame. Think about it. While his friends, and even his own cousin, were out on the front lines risking their lives, he was in a safe room writing poems. And this created this powerful, gnawing guilt inside him that he channeled directly into his art. It was his own unique form of resistance, not with a gun, but with just relentless self-examination.
And this right here, this is his most famous poem, and it just perfectly captures this whole idea to not have a speck of shame. I mean, what an impossibly high standard to hold yourself to. He feels tormented not by these grand historical injustices, but by something as gentle as the wind rustling the leaves. It's an incredible window into a sensitive soul just grappling with the immense weight of his time.
And the ultimate shame? Well, it came when he had to go to Japan to study. To do that, he was forced to adopt a Japanese name. In his poem Confession, he writes about looking at his face in a blue rusted copper mirror and feeling completely disgraced. That tarnished mirror is everything. It's his lost name, his occupied country, his own compromised self. But here's the thing. He doesn't just despair. He vows to polish that mirror every single night until he can one day see a proud self-portrait again.
So in 1942, he gets to Kyoto, Japan. He's now studying in the very heart of the empire that is crushing his people. And that guilt, you can imagine, it just intensifies. He writes about how shameful it is that poems come so easily to him while life for his people is just so incredibly hard. He feels this deep split right down the middle of his soul.
And this timeline, it's just absolutely heartbreaking to look at. In July of 1943, right as he was getting ready to come home, he and his cousin Song Mong-yu were arrested. He died in prison on February 16, 1945, just 6 months before Korea was liberated. Can you believe that? The new dawn he wrote about and waited for his whole life was just over the horizon, but he would never, ever get to see it.
So what was his crime? What did he do? Well, he was charged under this infamous Public Security Preservation Law. And what's so wild about this law is that you didn't actually have to do anything. Just talking about independence with friends or writing poems that encouraged a sense of Korean identity, that was considered a major crime. Your thoughts themselves were literally illegal.
For decades, the official cause of his death was a lie. The truth, which was only revealed in post-war documents, is just horrific. As the war was nearing its end, the Japanese military got desperate for medical supplies, and so inside Fukuoka prison, they conducted medical experiments on prisoners. They injected unrefined seawater directly into the veins of healthy young Korean men, including Yoon Dong-ju, in this cruel, twisted attempt to find a substitute for saline solution.
So, the story should have ended right there. A poet, murdered in prison, his manuscripts probably burned by an empire trying to erase his entire culture. Which leads to an absolutely miraculous question. How on earth are we able to read his poems today?
The answer is a story of just incredible loyalty. Before he left for Japan, Yoon gave this handwritten manuscript to his good friend Jung Byung-uk. But then Jung was drafted into the army. Before leaving for what could have easily been his death, he gave the poems to his mother and just begged her to protect them. So she wrapped the manuscript in silk, buried it in a huge pot under the floorboards of her house, and kept it hidden all through the rest of the war. After liberation, those poems were brought into the light and finally published. I mean, it's incredible. The loyalty of his friends literally resurrected him from the dead.
So his resurrection as a poet was complete. But today, his story isn't just some relic of the past. It has actually become a modern battleground. His identity is interpreted in starkly different ways all across East Asia, and each one is shaped by present-day politics and national memories.
And this table really lays out the politics of memory so clearly. In South Korea, he is, without a doubt, our national icon of anti-colonial resistance. Full stop. In Japan, while he's honored by a lot of people, the mainstream story often frames him as this universal symbol of peace and reconciliation, a framing that can kind of downplay the specific colonial violence that killed him. And then in China, because his birthplace is now Chinese territory, he's often claimed as a Chinese-Korean ethnic poet, which sort of absorbs his anti-imperialist legacy into their own national story.
So with all these competing national narratives, it's really easy to lose sight of the man himself. And I think this is the crucial point. His legacy isn't about some grand, loud heroism. It's about something quieter, but maybe even more profound. The courage to constantly look inward, to face your own shame, and to, like he wrote, polish your own tarnished mirror. This quiet resistance is what makes him so enduring.
Just think about this for a second. Yoon Dong-ju died before the Republic of Korea was even founded. He never held a South Korean ID card in his life. It took 77 years, all the way until 2022, for him to be posthumously granted South Korean nationality. For almost his entire existence, both in life and in death, he was, on paper, a man without a country.
And that leaves us with one final big thought. We see nations fighting to claim him as their own. But for a stateless man who is killed by the brutalities of nationalism and empire, can his story really be confined to just one country? Or does his quiet, shameful, beautiful resistance belong to anyone, anywhere, who has ever felt powerless in the face of tyranny, a shared legacy for all of humanity?